Imagine a person walking through a quiet city park early in the morning. The air is still cold. The paths are mostly empty. If you were to watch this person pass by from a nearby bench, you would see absolutely nothing unusual. You would observe the steady rhythm of their footsteps. You would see the physical act of a morning routine. But beneath that calm exterior, a quiet and intense battle is taking place. This person is not listening to the morning news. They are not enjoying the scenery. They are not casually letting their mind wander through the trivial worries of the week. Instead, they are holding a single, complex professional problem in their mind. They are wrestling with it. They are turning it over and refusing to let it go. Every time their attention tries to slip away toward an easier thought, they forcefully pull it back. They are using the physical rhythm of their body to anchor the severe effort of their mind. They are doing something that looks entirely passive from the outside, but is in fact one of the most demanding cognitive exercises a human being can perform. And when they finally return to their front door, they will not just have finished a walk. They will have solved an intellectual puzzle that had been paralyzing them for days. Think about what usually takes place when we step outside for a walk, or when we get into a car for a long drive, or even when we stand in the shower. The very first instinct is to fill the silence. We plug in earphones, we turn on the radio, we consume music, audiobooks, or interviews. We crave input. If we do not consume external audio, we let our minds scatter into 1,000 different directions. We think about an email we forgot to send. We replay a slightly awkward conversation from yesterday. We worry about a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Our attention fractures. The physical time passes, but the mind simply treads water. We have accepted the idea that when the body is in motion, the mind should either be entertained or allowed to completely unravel. We treat these pockets of physical routine as dead time, or at best as time for passive mental recovery. But what if that assumption is entirely wrong? What if these moments of mindless physical motion are actually the most valuable and underused cognitive spaces we possess? There is a tension here between what we think our brains need and what they are actually capable of achieving. We tend to believe that serious professional thinking only happens sitting down, staring at a screen, or standing in front of a whiteboard. We believe that physical distraction requires mental distraction. Yet, history and neuroscience point toward a completely different reality. Bodies in motion can create minds of extraordinary sharpness, provided that attention is harnessed and directed with absolute precision. We are completely wasting the cognitive potential of our daily routines. The very moments we use to escape our work are the exact moments we could use to finally master our most difficult challenges. Welcome. Today we are exploring a concept that turns ordinary moments into engines of extraordinary clarity. We are looking at what happens when physical movement is combined with intense, singular focus. We will examine how time spent engaged in mindless physical activity can be actively harnessed to solve complex professional problems. By the end of this conversation, you will understand exactly why your mind rebels when you try to focus without external input. You will recognize the hidden opportunities in your daily routine where profound thinking is waiting to happen. Most importantly, you will have a clear, concrete method to train your attention like a muscle, transforming a simple walk or a daily commute into an instrument of profound problem solving. You will learn to notice the difference between simply thinking about work and actively meditating on a problem. And you will see how this small shift in behavior can alter the entire trajectory of your professional capabilities. Let us define exactly what we are discussing. We are talking about productive meditation. On the surface, this sounds like a contradiction in terms. The word meditation usually brings to mind the practice of emptying the head, observing thoughts without judgment, or focusing gently on the breath. The goal of traditional mindfulness is often to detach from the relentless demands of the world. Productive meditation does the exact opposite. It does not empty the mind. It fills the mind to the absolute brim with exactly one thing. It requires taking a period of physical motion, such as walking, jogging, driving, or showering, and deliberately focusing your attention on a single, well-defined professional problem. The mechanism relies on two essential pillars. First, the physical activity must be genuinely mindless. It must be something you can do on autopilot. If you are walking, it must be on a familiar path where you do not need to navigate or worry about traffic. If you are driving, it must be a routine commute on an open road, not a stressful journey through chaotic city intersections. The physical act must occupy the lower levels of your nervous system just enough to keep your body moving, but not enough to demand active cognitive processing. This baseline of physical engagement actually helps to quiet the restless parts of the brain that constantly seek novel stimuli. The second pillar is the absolute singularity of the problem. You cannot step outside and vaguely decide to think about your career. You cannot go for a run to brainstorm generally about a project. That is not productive meditation. That is simply daydreaming. To succeed, the problem must be sharp, specific, and well-defined. It might be the architecture of a specific software algorithm. It might be the opening argument for a legal case. It might be the underlying narrative structure of an article you are writing. It might be a strategy for delivering difficult feedback to an employee. You select this single target before you begin the physical activity. And then, once you are in motion, you direct the entirety of your mental processing power toward that exact target. This sounds simple, but it changes more than it first appears to. When you attempt this for the first time, you will immediately discover a painful truth. Your mind will rebel. Within the first 2 minutes of your walk, your attention will slip away. You will suddenly find yourself thinking about what you are going to eat for dinner. You will find yourself admiring a tree, or feeling annoyed by a passing car, or remembering a trivial piece of gossip. This is the crucial moment. In traditional daydreaming, you would simply follow that new thought wherever it leads. In productive meditation, you must treat your attention like a physical muscle. When you notice that your mind has wandered, you must firmly and deliberately pull it back to the specific professional problem. You acknowledge the distraction, and you return to the work. You will have to do this dozens of times during a single session. This continuous pulling back of the attention is not a sign of failure. It is the actual exercise. The resistance you feel is the exact mechanism that builds your capacity for deep, sustained concentration. Now, here is where it gets interesting. To truly understand why this is so difficult and why it is so valuable, we must look deeper at how the human brain manages attention. We possess a deep-seated aversion to intense cognitive effort. Our brains are highly efficient machines, constantly seeking ways to conserve energy. Deep, structured thinking burns a tremendous amount of metabolic energy. Consequently, the brain will always look for an excuse to switch to an easier task. This is why, when sitting at a desk facing a difficult project, the urge to check email or look at a phone becomes almost physically overwhelming. The brain is pleading for a low-energy, high-reward distraction. When you remove the screens, leave your desk, and go for a walk, you strip away the brain's easy escape routes. You force it into a corner. But the brain is cunning. Even without a phone, it will invent internal distractions. It will supply you with highly emotional, low-value thoughts. It will tempt you with rumination. Rumination is the greatest enemy of productive meditation. Let us slow down for a second and examine this distinction, because it is where most people fail. When you set out to solve a professional problem, your mind will often try to trick you by looping over things you already know. If you are trying to write a difficult presentation, your mind might start replaying the conversation where you were assigned the presentation. You might feel a surge of stress about the deadline. You might imagine the audience reacting poorly. You might mentally list the people who will be in the room. This feels like you are thinking about the work, but you are not. You are simply engaging in emotional rumination. You are running in mental circles, generating anxiety without making a single step of forward progress on the actual problem. Productive meditation requires a strict refusal of rumination. It demands forward motion. To achieve this, the thinking process must be carefully structured. You cannot just throw your mind at a problem and hope for the best. You must break the cognitive work into distinct phases. The first phase, as you begin your walk or your drive, is to carefully load the relevant variables into your working memory. You review the constraints. You remind yourself of the facts. If you are designing a physical product, you visualize the dimensions, the materials, and the user requirements. You hold all these pieces in your mind simultaneously. Once the variables are loaded, you move to the second phase. You define the specific next step question. You do not ask how to solve the entire project. You ask the exact question that needs answering right now. How do we transition from the current material to the new material without increasing the weight? How do I structure the transition between the third and fourth paragraph of this essay? What is the specific data point that proves this marketing hypothesis? You frame the question clearly. Then comes the real work. You direct your attention toward answering that specific next step question using the variables you are holding in your working memory. This is where the cognitive friction is highest. This is where the mind will desperately try to escape into rumination or distraction. You must repeatedly bring it back to the next step question. You turn the variables around. You look for connections. You test hypotheses internally. When a breakthrough finally happens, when you see the solution or the necessary connection, you enter the final phase. You consolidate the gain. You take the new insight and repeat it to yourself clearly. You integrate it into your mental model of the project. You make sure the conclusion is solid enough to survive the rest of the walk and the journey home. This entire cycle might take 30 minutes of intense concentration. It is exhausting, but it produces a quality of thought that is almost impossible to achieve while sitting in a noisy office surrounded by digital notifications. Let us make this concrete. We need to look at how this actually functions in the lives of busy, overwhelmed professionals. We need to see the lived consequences of this practice. Consider a software engineer grappling with a major architectural flaw in a piece of code. For 3 days, they have been staring at their monitors. They have been scrolling through thousands of lines of code. They have been trying to patch the system, but every fix creates a new bug elsewhere. The complexity has grown beyond what they can hold on a screen. On a Thursday evening, instead of working late, they put on their running shoes and head out for a long, slow run. They leave their phone at home. As they start moving, they load the variables. They visualize the data pipeline. They picture how the modules interact. The next step question is defined. Where exactly is the memory leak occurring during the peak processing load? For the first 2 kilometers, their mind fights the process. They worry about the upcoming deadline. They think about a disagreement with a colleague. They pull the attention back. They hold the data pipeline in their mind. Around kilometer 4, as the physical rhythm of running takes over, the mental chatter subsides. The mind settles into the problem. Suddenly, without the visual clutter of the screen, the entire architecture becomes clear in their imagination. They see the exact intersection where the logic fails. They consolidate the answer, finish the run, and the next morning, they write the solution in 20 minutes. Think about a senior manager preparing for a highly sensitive conversation. They need to restructure a department, which means changing the roles of 3 long-term employees. Sitting at their desk, looking at an organizational chart, the manager only feels anxiety. Every time they try to draft a script, they get caught in loops of guilt or frustration. So they decide to walk the long way home. They define the problem. How can I frame this restructuring so that the core business need is clear, but the employees feel their historical contributions are respected? The variables are the financial realities of the company, the specific personalities of the 3 employees, and the ultimate goal of the team. As they walk through the busy streets, the mind tries to run away to the stress of the impending confrontation. They gently pull it back. They do not allow themselves to replay past arguments. They force themselves to construct the opening sentences of the meeting. They test different tones. They evaluate how a certain phrase will be received by the most defensive employee. By the time they unlock their front door, they have not just planned a meeting. They have found the emotional clarity and the precise language required to lead like a professional. Consider an academic researcher struggling to connect 2 disparate sets of data for a crucial paper. Their desk is covered in printed articles. Their browser has 30 tabs open. The sheer volume of external information is paralyzing their ability to synthesize. They decide to do the household chores. They begin folding laundry and vacuuming the living room. These are entirely mindless physical activities. They set the next step question. What is the theoretical bridge between the historical data from the first study and the behavioral data from the second? As they fold towels, their mind drifts toward checking their email. They stop the thought. They bring the focus back to the two datasets. The rhythmic, repetitive motion of the hands folding fabric provides a steady metronome for the brain. The physical detachment from the computer allows the subconscious to process the patterns. Suddenly, the overarching theme reveals itself. The vacuuming is forgotten. The intellectual breakthrough has been achieved, not by reading more, but by stepping away and forcing the mind to chew on what it already knows. Imagine an architect tasked with designing a public space that must serve conflicting community needs. The client wants open areas, but also intimate seating. The initial sketches feel disjointed and forced. The architect decides to take an hour-long drive on the highway. The driving is routine. The road is straight. The problem is locked in. How do we transition smoothly from the grand open plaza to the quiet enclosed gardens? They load the variables, the dimensions of the lot, the path of the sun, the materials available. They ignore the urge to turn on a podcast. They listen only to the hum of the tires. The mind wanders toward the fee structure of the contract. They recognize the distraction and pull back to the spatial problem. They begin to mentally walk through the space. They imagine the sight lines. They visualize the shadows at noon. In the uninterrupted quiet of the car, they realize that a slight elevation change, rather than a wall, will create the necessary separation. They consolidate the idea, repeating the dimensions to themselves until they can pull over and sketch it. Finally, think about a writer trying to untangle a complex narrative. They have written 50 pages, but the story is dead. The characters are flat. Sitting at the keyboard only produces more useless words. The writer goes to a local swimming pool. Swimming is perhaps the ultimate environment for this practice. The sensory deprivation is nearly complete. The breathing is heavily regulated. The physical effort is constant. The writer sets the problem. What is the actual motivation of the main character in the third chapter? As they swim lap after lap, they test different psychological angles. The mind tries to think about how tired the shoulders feel. The attention is yanked back to the character. The rhythmic splashing becomes white noise. In the middle of the pool, stripped of all notebooks and screens, the writer sees the precise emotional flaw they missed. They hold on to that revelation for the remaining laps, burning it into their memory so it will not be lost in the locker room. In every one of these scenarios, the listener might think, that is exactly what happens, or that explains something I have struggled to name. We have all experienced flashes of insight in the shower or during a walk. But those flashes are usually accidental. They are the result of the subconscious finally being given a moment of peace. What we are exploring here is not accidental. It is deliberate, engineered, and rigorous. It is the difference between hoping for inspiration and actively hunting for it. We must zoom out from these individual moments and look at the bigger picture. We need to explore what this necessity for productive meditation suggests about our modern culture, our relationship with technology, and our fundamental human nature. We are living in a society that aggressively penalizes deep thought. We have built professional environments and personal habits that almost entirely eradicate the conditions necessary for sustained concentration. Look at the modern office. It is an ecosystem designed for continuous partial attention. It runs on instant messaging, relentless email traffic, and a culture of immediate responsiveness. We have equated fast communication with high productivity. But fast communication only serves logistical coordination. It cannot solve complex, ambiguous problems. We are treating cognitive workers like human network routers, passing small packets of information back and forth all day long. When do we actually expect people to do the deep, difficult thinking that creates real value? The answer is usually unspoken. We expect them to do it on their own time, on weekends, or late at night. We have structured our institutions in a way that makes thinking the hardest thing to do at work. Beyond the workplace, our relationship with technology has fundamentally altered our tolerance for solitude. We carry devices that offer infinite, frictionless distraction. The moment we feel the slight discomfort of boredom or the cognitive strain of a difficult thought, we reach into our pockets to numb the sensation. We are terrified of being alone with our own thoughts. We treat a quiet mind as a void that must be filled with content. In doing so, we are letting our cognitive muscles atrophy. We are losing the mental endurance required to hold a complex problem in our working memory, turn it over, and find a solution. This is not just a productivity issue. It is a profound shift in human capability. The ability to concentrate intensely on a single problem is not a natural gift. It is a trained ability. Historically, the greatest thinkers, scientists, and creators intuitively understood the relationship between physical motion and deep thought. The image of the philosopher walking through the woods is a cultural cliché, but it is rooted in mechanical truth. They walked not to relax, but to work. They used the rhythm of their bodies to tame the chaos of their minds. When we abandon this practice, when we refuse to engage in the hard work of directing our attention, we default to shallow solutions. We rely on the first idea that comes to mind. We borrow opinions from the internet. We copy what others have done because we do not have the mental stamina to build something original from the ground up. The societal cost of this attention deficit is invisible but massive. We are producing less original thought. We are solving fewer hard problems. We are substituting genuine intellectual breakthroughs with iterative, superficial tweaks. To reclaim this capability is an act of quiet rebellion. When you engage in productive meditation, you are rejecting the distracted norm of the culture. You are stating that your attention belongs to you and that you will direct it where it is most needed. You are cultivating a rare and immensely valuable skill. In an economy that increasingly automates routine tasks, the ability to perform deep, unstructured problem solving is the ultimate professional advantage. It cannot be outsourced. It cannot be replicated by algorithms. It requires a human mind, working with intense focus, pushing through cognitive resistance to find clarity. This brings us to the most crucial understanding. Productive meditation is hard work. It will never feel easy. Even after years of practice, the mind will still try to wander. The urge to stop thinking and start daydreaming will always be present. But the resistance is the point. Just as a weightlifter needs the heavy resistance of the iron to build muscle, the cognitive worker needs the resistance of the wandering mind to build concentration. Every single time you notice your attention drifting during a walk, and every single time you deliberately pull it back to your chosen problem, you are strengthening your neurological capacity for focus. You are literally rewiring your brain to sustain attention. We are nearing the end of our exploration. Let us bring the intellectual and emotional thread of this conversation into a meaningful conclusion. We have looked at the mechanics of productive meditation. We have examined the profound difficulty of controlling a wandering mind. We have seen how this practice transforms ordinary physical routines into periods of intense intellectual breakthrough. And we have recognized the broader cultural forces that make this kind of deep thinking so incredibly rare. What you may notice differently tomorrow morning is the physical sensation of your own attention. When you step outside, or when you begin a routine physical task, you will feel the immediate, almost magnetic pull toward your phone or toward a distracting audio stream. You will recognize the brain's demand for easy entertainment. You will also recognize the sneaky nature of rumination, how it masquerades as useful thought while secretly keeping you stuck in an emotional loop. You will see these patterns clearly now. Here is a concrete experiment for the coming week. Choose one specific, well-defined professional problem that has been resisting an easy solution. Do not pick an overwhelming life question. Pick a structural problem, an architectural challenge, a narrative block, or a strategic decision. Tomorrow, set aside 30 minutes for a walk, a run, or a drive. Leave the phone behind or turn the radio off entirely. Before you begin moving, load the variables into your mind. Define the exact next step question, and then begin to move. When the mind rebels, and it absolutely will, do not become frustrated. Acknowledge the distraction. Recognize that your brain is simply trying to conserve energy. Then, firmly and patiently, bring your attention back to the problem. Do this 10 times. Do this 50 times if necessary. Treat the mental effort with the same respect you would treat a physical workout. You may not solve the entire problem on the first attempt, but you will make progress. You will experience the unique clarity that only comes when the body is in motion and the mind is completely anchored to a single point. You will begin to build a cognitive endurance that will serve you in every aspect of your professional life. You have the capacity for extraordinary focus already within you. It is simply waiting for you to create the right conditions, quiet the external noise, and demand the deep work your mind is capable of delivering. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to explore the deeper mechanics of how we think.